My name is Jim Obergefell, and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. The state of Ohio, the state in which I've lived, worked, and paid taxes for most of my life, continued to fight my right to list my name on John's death certificate. No American should have to suffer that indignity. That's why John and I, and the 30 plaintiffs who are part of this lawsuit, decided to fight.
Jim Obergefell. Jim and his husband, John Arthur, were together for 21 years before getting married. After being introduced by friends and soon after beginning to date, the two became inseparable. They shared a life of joy, adventure, and love. Tragedy struck when in 2011, John was diagnosed with ALS, a fatal disease, and was given less than 3 years to live.
We hugged and kissed John in his bed and said, let's get married. Because for once, here was our chance to actually have our federal government acknowledge our relationship.
After the Windsor Supreme Court case, Jim and John decided to marry. Family and friends helped to charter a medical jet for them to fly to Maryland, as same-sex marriage was legal there. On October 22, 2013, John died from the complications of ALS.
Jim carries John with him everywhere he goes. His wedding ring has been fused with John's and even contains some of his ashes.
The two men wanted to make sure that Jim was listed as John's spouse on the death certificate. This was against the state same-sex marriage ban of 2004. Jim and his lawyer, Al Gerhardstein, sued the state of Ohio, and so the case began in Obergefell versus Kasich. The case was directed against the Ohio Department of Health, which changed the name to the more well-known Obergefell versus Hodges, as Richard Hodges was the director of the department.
And so this was a very important affirmation of their life together, of their commitment to each other, and of their place in our civil society if we're going to let this happen.
Judge Timothy Black of the U.S. District Court for Southern Ohio ruled in Jim's favor. The state promptly appealed the case to the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. His case was joined by 6 others, as this court covers Ohio, Michigan, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Through it all, Jim held fast and pushed forward. At this point, the case had polarized a nation. It brought hope and joy to the many affected by it and their supporters. Conversely, it exposed the fear, hatred, and bigotry of those against it. As a whole, nearly 60% of Americans supported same-sex marriage. Judge Jeffrey Sutton of the Sixth Circuit wrote the opinion which reversed the lower court's decision. By ruling against Obergefell, the judge set the case on a path to the Supreme Court of the United States. When the case reached the Supreme Court, everyone knew this was going to be an historic moment. The court was closely divided, and no one was quite sure how it would turn out. In the end, the 4 liberal court justices, Ginsburg, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Breyer, were joined by Justice Anthony Kennedy and ruled that all Americans had the same right to marriage and the rights and benefits that go along with it. The 4 conservative justices, Scalia, Thomas, Alito, and Roberts, wrote the blistering dissents in fierce disagreement with the majority opinion. But at the end of the day, Jim Obergefell took a stand and won. His case brought marriage equality and dignity to the nation.
21 years through thick and thin. Today's ruling from the Supreme Court affirms what millions across this country already know to be true in our hearts. Our love is equal. That the 4 words etched onto the front of the Supreme Court, equal justice under law, apply to us, too. All Americans deserve equal dignity, respect, and treatment when it comes to the recognition of our relationships and families. Now, at long last, Ohio will recognize our marriage, and most important, marriage equality.